long term, I mean, we're talking long term here, talking about being bark, we can get rid of these. So the goal, the job of being a Buddhist daily is knowing your mind and lessening your attachment, your anger, your fears, your jealousy, your depression.
Is that correct? What I'm feeling is that when you face it and you know it, stop having less.
Well, when you face it, it's a first step. Facing and knowing it, but you've got to now change it.
Yeah.
Of course, it's reasonable.
Well,
Just a tick. Are we communicating?
Yeah. But changing it is
arguing with it. It's just, when you realise there's a state. So what are you talking about? I mean, what are you give an example?
A woman pulls out in front of me.
Oh, okay. You get angry.
I get angry.
Yeah, right. So what would be working with it? What would be facing it? How would it look if you faced it? How would it sound? What would you say?
She's only trying to be happy. She's only doing.
Oh, okay. There you go. Right. Good example. You argued with it, basically. Yeah, and you didn't reinforce it. Say you're right to be angry. She's wrong. You argued with it.
It's my problem.
It's called practice. That's called practice. That's example of practice. That's it. But you didn't face it. You not only faced it, you changed it. You argued with it. You counteracted it. Well, you've got to own it. The first step is to own the fact that you're eating the wrong food, not keep blaming everyone else for, yeah, I'm eating the wrong food, that's why I get a bellyache. You won't change a thing until you own the mistake. So locating the mistake has to be the first step. It's so practical, isn't it? And this is why it's so painful when it comes to this stuff, because because what I'm feeling, because the way the Buddha's talking about ego, the way we would say it is, it's actually the victim voice. It's not my fault. It's her fault. I've got no choice but to be angry. It's not my fault. He's cheating on me. Of course I'm jealous. And then we become paralyzed. So to own it is a very hard one. It's 90% of it. And that's what's difficult.
And then the second step is to argue with it?
Well, that's the practice, isn't it? What else would you do with it?
No. So you smoke cigarettes, you know it's wrong. I smoke cigarettes, I know it's wrong.
Well, wrong meaning why? Because it's causing you suffering?
Yeah, or I know, yeah, it causes me suffering.
Does it? Physical suffering? Mental? Which aspect of it is? Well, it's...
but physical too. I cough, I have mucus to spit up, I don't like the taste in my mouth and the smell on my hands.
I understand, yeah. But this is what attachment is. It's hard to change habits, isn't it? Attachment is just a junky habit, that's all. And there are some objects we know are quite strong, aren't they? Quite addictive. So certainly cigarettes is one of them. So we look at the state of mind, which is the craving to keep having. And it's a simple example of it, isn't it? Yeah. And then you try and change. Maybe you have to start thinking, I'd like to change first.
Yeah, that is the first step. Isn't
It has to be. It's got to be. Everything has got to be that. And that's a really obvious, simple example, isn't it? Yeah. So there's different, yeah. Anyway, anybody else? Something came up? So, I'm saying I said yesterday, I think, there's this nice analogy, I like it a lot, I quote it a lot, this Buddhist approach, there's a nice, the analogy is that a bird needs two wings, wisdom and compassion. So we've been virtually talking about the wisdom wing, the work on yourself to recognize, and the two main components there, as I've been discussing, maybe I'll discuss more the karmic one, because we all know that word, but maybe there's not much awareness of the of the details, of the nuts and bolts of it. So when you study Buddhism in more depth, you'd certainly learn about this. It's been dealt with in the literature for thousands of years, this concept of karma. So the Buddhist view, like we said yesterday, just summarizing, essentially this person called Buddha came out of this amazing Indian tradition 2,500 years ago, from his own experience, came up with certain findings, and I say it like this purposely, because of how we talk in science, you know, came up with his own findings from his own experience in his own mind about what happiness is, what suffering is, what the causes are, who we are. In fact, from the bigger point of view, it's actually a world view. It's not just about how to meditate, you know, it's not just about know your mind better. It's the central aspect of it. But from the bigger picture point of view, like I mentioned with the fisherman, that example, to really work on your own mind, if you're using Buddha's tools and you're taking on board all the Buddha's views, then karma plays a massive role. The whole idea of who you are and where you come from and why you've got these habits and why you have this tendency to kill, you know, or whatever it is, using the fisherman as the example. And therefore seeing why it's so hard to look into ourselves and change ourselves, because we come programmed into this life, you know. So like I said, we've either got the view that you're made by God, or you've got the view that mummy and daddy made you. They're the two main options on the earth, you know. Most people, either you believe in a religion or you believe that your mother made you, one or the other. Buddha's kind of got like a third view, you know. Your parents give you a body, how kind. But he does not posit a creator. Does not have a view of a creator at all. He would argue with that view. He would say we don't need creating, because we create ourselves very nicely, thank you very much. So the concept in Buddhism, as I've been suggesting, is consciousness, your mind, not physical, not the handiwork of a creator or your mummy or daddy, not a function of your brain, although of course you can describe the interdependence of these two. But your consciousness is like this river of mental moments that goes back and back and back and back and back and back and back. This is just this is the Buddha's view. So there's natural law called karma, action. And the fundamentals of it are that every second of what we think and do and say, every second of it, there's nothing missing. Every moment is this constant process of programming, and I think that's a good term for it, programming our own consciousness. Having thoughts, doing actions with our body and with our speech on the basis of those thoughts to a really subtle level. And this is constantly sowing seeds in our consciousness, and nothing goes astray. Every second that we think and do and say leaves imprints, leaves seeds, programs our consciousness. And these seeds, if we don't do something with them, we don't pull them out essentially, will ripen in the future as our experiences. This is the essential view in Buddhism. So in that sense we can say we create ourselves, as weird as that sounds. So like I said yesterday, we'll go into a bit more depth now. At the time of our past death, not more than a few weeks before we go to find our way to our mother's womb, first of all, the karmic seed that was, in this case for us, a very strong, virtuous karmic seed, was triggered, that already programmed us to go to our present mother's human womb. Secondly, the seeds that will then ripen as all our tendencies, our personality traits, our characteristics, tendency to be good, to be loving, to be kind, to be jealous, to be angry, to kill, to lie, to play football, to play music, whatever. Our personality. Very clear for the Buddha. These do not come from your parents. This is a surprise initially because that's one we accept as the default mode. Doesn't mean that your parents don't play a role. In general, it doesn't mean the external world doesn't play a role. It plays an intimate, deep role in our lives, but the crucial point, even to this degree, for the Buddha, is that what goes on in our mind in the past, and indeed what goes on in our mind in the present, is this is the main cause of who we are. We produce ourselves. So it's quite a shocking concept, actually. Quite a surprise to hear it like this. This is the Buddha's view. So, without going into details already, the implications of this are quite tasty. It's responsibility, accountability. You come into this life with your own past tendencies. You're the cause of your being a human. You're the cause of all your own tendencies from having done them before. You're the cause even of the third way karma ripens is all the way we relate to others, how they relate to us, whether they harm us or help us or whatever. Sentient beings, including humans and rats and dogs and the cockroaches in your kitchen. We have this karmic history with all these sentient beings. So because for the Buddha, This is a natural law. He's not a creator. Therefore, it's not Buddha's law. Like we talk about God's law, you know, God made it up and then presents it. Well, this is not like that here. Buddha has no view like that. He's not a creator. He's an observer, he would say, and he's observed, this is the way it is. So this implies, obviously, if he has observed this, it implies, obviously, as we've been already talking, these much subtler levels of our own mind. You know, that we learn to access if we do this meditation technique and as we become highly developed practitioners. You know, as we progress, we access these ever more subtle levels of our own mind, our own capacity for cognition. And when we've accomplished this single-pointedness, you know, this concentration, I began just reading from Lama's chapter on the qualities of your mind when you've accomplished just single-pointed concentration, not to mention other realizations. Then you know one of those qualities is clairvoyance. The capacity to see the past, see the future, see the minds of others. This is something completely natural for the Buddha's view. So then, using the view of karma, which of course you have to study because it doesn't come out of the sky, you've got to know the details about it, it's in all the Buddhist literature, using the view of karma, because you have to study it first, you have to think about it theoretically, because you know, who's clairvoyant? I'm not clairvoyant, I can't see the future and the past, I don't know I can't say with certainty it's correct, but I can understand it theoretically. You've got to start with a theory. So as I mentioned to you, this is one of the most powerful things for me as a Buddhist, which I've chosen to take on board as an explanation for why things happen, you know. I think that so much of our suffering and misery is because we have no answers to the question, why do bad things happen? Why is this happening? Because it seems like there's no logic to anything. If you can't see the causes, if you don't know the law of botany, if you never even knew there was such a thing as botany, then it would be very confusing looking at all these things popping up in the ground, not knowing why. If you don't know why something happens, you can't work with it. So it's very obvious. But the Buddha would say this is a natural law. No one runs it. And because no one's running it, there's no punishment or reward, because there's no punisher and there's no rewarder. It's a natural law. And things bring their own natural consequences. So the general principle here in karma is that negative actions, an action that's labelled negative, which is one, simply speaking at the first level, an action with your body and speech that's motivated by a neurotic state of mind, will leave seeds in your mind that will ripen in the future suffering. Just like eating wrong, lousy food will ripen in the future as your bellyache. It's not complicated. Just that when we hear it, when it comes to spiritual and moral, we kind of have a panic attack. And the virtuous actions, positive actions, which is something with your body and speech motivated by a virtuous state of mind, leave seeds in your mind, program your mind such that it will ripen in the future as happiness. So this word happiness and suffering have massive meaning. And then logically, because we want happiness and don't want suffering, it's not very complicated. If you don't want belly aches, you've got to learn the cause of it. Once you know the cause of it, then the action is to stop doing it. It's not surprising. The same here. This is the basis of Buddhist practice. It starts with this simple practice of refraining from doing actions that are negative for your own sake first. And then as you progress, controlling your body and speech, harnessing the energy of your body and speech, like living in vows, for example. This plays a big deal in Buddhism. It's got logic to it. Then you start the real job of working on your mind, which is the main cause of the problems, the main cause of your problems. And you keep progressing, lessening the neuroses, lessening the negative actions, growing your own potential, growing your own contentment, growing your own fulfillment, growing your own kindness, and then more and more you're then capable of doing the other wing of the bird, the compassion wing, which is to be of benefit to others, because you've removed a lot of the junk out of your way that prevents you from seeing others. Because right now we see everybody through the lens of our own needs, you know, pretty straightforward. So when we get more and more content, more and more wise, more and more clear ourselves, less and less neurotic, you're able to become more and more appropriate and kind and compassionate and brave with others. It's kind of reasonable. So like I mentioned, karma ripens in 4 ways, you know. The first way is the very life you've got, in our case human. And the second track of karma, as I'm mentioning, is all your tendencies. And the third one is all your experiences at the hands of others. And that's of course pretty intense, because that's where we see all our suffering. It's always in terms of the external world, isn't it? Things happen, bad things happen, mean people do things, the boss is unkind, the sister is horrible, the boyfriend cheats on us. So because we're so involved in this world, we think of ourselves as a sort of in the center of this world all around us. And this world, we see it as the cause of our happiness and the cause of our suffering. So we're very focused on the external. And then even the environment. The physical world, the way the physical world impacts upon us. So Buddha's literally saying, the way the Dalai Lama puts it sometimes, we are our own creators. It's self-creation. It's like that. Which is a kind of interesting concept, you've got to admit. It's kind of fascinating. It really does demand that we're in charge then, you know. So that means whatever happens, all the bad things, all the good things, we are the main cause of it. We are the main cause of it. So in all the, as they call it, the wisdom teachings, all this understanding of the way the mind works leads to a more subtle understanding of the way the mind works. And this gets really to the point in the wisdom wing still, not the compassion wing yet, but the wisdom wing, the deepest delusion, to attack the deepest delusion of all, which is this primordial misconception about our own very self. The way the I, the self, and indeed everything else actually exists. And this is where it can sound very abstract to us, because we don't tend to, you know, look into these things, perhaps. This is the root mistake, the root neurosis, Buddha says. And this is the one that even informs our attachment and fears and anger and all the rest, you know. This root delusion, they call it, this ego, they refer to it colloquially as ego grasping. So if you've read any of the Buddhist things and tried to study Buddhism or practice Buddhism, you know the word, they talk about realizing emptiness, understanding emptiness, and this can get utterly confusing. We can really completely have misconceptions about it and get completely confused. So one way to understand this is in the context of what they call the two truths. Things have a conventional truth and ultimate truth. And the Buddha's basically saying everything exists in the universe, you know, conventionally. The universe clearly consists of countless different phenomena. And what he's saying is, based on all these delusions we have, these neuroses we have in the mind, the anger, the attachment, all these things, ordinary words, and then especially the deepest one, this ego grasping, they all overstate things, they all exaggerate, they all distort, they all, seeing everything through the lenses of these states of mind, literally the world appears wrongly to us. Our own self and everything else appears through the lenses of these neuroses, and so then literally we're not seeing the world clearly. I mean, the simple example, the person who's born with the, like I mentioned, the fisherman, an example. Born with a strong tendency to kill, the Buddha would suggest, from having killed in the past. The moment he meets the condition in this life called fishing, then because he's got the tendency to do it and the attraction to it, he runs like a magnet towards it. It appears delicious. It triggers very good feelings in his mind and body. So then it appears delicious. So naturally, because it appears delicious to him and it triggers good feelings, well, of course he wants to do it. Of course he will do it again and again. And all those years he went fishing, he never, when he looked at those fish in his boat, he would never have seen suffering. That's literally, then you can say it's quite literally a delusion. It's obvious to anybody with half a brain that the fish aren't happy. But when you're familiar with something and you're attracted to doing it, you don't see it as it is. You see your own projection onto it. This word projection is a very good one. It's a very good meaning. We're projecting all the time. So attachment projects wonderfulness onto things, and aversion projects ugliness onto things. They're the two major mistakes in our daily life, and they work at a very subtle level, and we don't even notice them most of the time. Most of the time. So like right now, we can't even distinguish between attachment to chocolate cake and merely liking chocolate cake. They're two massively, completely different states of mind. It sounds almost like a joke to say that. So I can't tell the difference between loving my boyfriend and being attached to my boyfriend. I can't even tell the difference between loving my mother and being attached to my mother. We can't distinguish these two states of mind. This is why even to begin to understand Buddha's view of the mind, we have to try and comprehend, at least intellectually, how we have these states of mind that are in their nature neurotic, in their nature disturbing, in their nature delusional. They're ordinary words, like love, these ones I said, attachment and the root delusion, the ego grasping, which I'm getting to. That's the deepest lie. We don't even acknowledge such a state of mind, I think, in our culture, in our psychology in the West. This deepest delusion that informs the attachment, the anger, the jealousy, and it's the very sense of self that we have. And this gets very confusing. So, you know, we all have a sense of self. We all say, I'm a self. We all know that. And something good happens, I get excited. Something bad happens, I get upset. We talk like this, and it's utterly what we call normal. Well, Buddha just has gone far enough, I would suggest, that he's unpacking all this to see that actually, yes, it's all normal because we've got it, but you know what? We can go beyond all this. It's all a load of rubbish, you know. Go beyond all these states of mind. That's his particular approach. So he says these delusions are liars. One of their main functions is to lie to us. The stronger the habit to have those delusions, and he would say from past lives, he says we come fully programmed into this life at the first moment of conception. You don't come as a blank slate, no way. We come fully programmed with all of our tendencies, our experiences, those we're going to meet, how they see us, all this. And this root delusion is the one we finally have to eradicate from the mind. That's when we would... Huh? What happened? Nothing. So it's, you know, this root. The more we understand the more we understand these regular ones, like attachment and anger, the stuff that seems so evident, and yet it's quite subtle for us. Then we understand how they're liars and they're disturbing. Then we can really begin to understand theoretically, even start with a theory of this root delusion, as they call it, this primordial, frantic, wrong sense of self. This is the hardest to recognize. The primordial misconception of I, deep in our bones. And the interesting point about all these neuroses is they're rooted in fear. Their nature, their taste is fear. So I would say we experience this, as they call it, ego grasping, this root delusion. We understand it, we actually know the experience of it. It's when something really shocking happens, like the car nearly runs you over. I think Mr. Darwin calls it instinct for survival. When your heart beats, you're practically have a panic attack, isn't it? When the car nearly runs you over, you nearly have an accident. It's shocking, or someone accuses you of something terrible. It's like our sense of I is completely attacked. We consider that normal. Well, it is normal, but it's the symptom of this deepest delusion, this deepest sense of self that's most of the time is like a sleeping lion. And only awakens as this primordial fear when something really dramatic happens. But the Buddha's arguing even with that one. He says we can get to that one and uproot even that one. So as Lama Zopa says, when we've realized emptiness, and I'm going to unpack these terms, then there is no fear, quite literally. And that again is so absurd in our world's view, you know. There's no state of mind. There's no view like that. We can go beyond all fear. It just sounds like ridiculous. But this is the Buddha's view. So the more we understand, like I said before, junior school is like control your body and speech, please. Back off, don't kill, don't jump on every single partner you feel like it, don't eat everything you feel like. Try and control your body and speech. Harness your verbal and physical energy, not because you're naughty, but because then you'll begin to get deep into your mind. Now you get to the real cause of the dramas, which is the states of mind that inform your body and speech. So junior school is like control your body and speech. Get to high school, now you can become your own therapist. Really work on your mind. That's the essence of really being a Buddhist. Working with your mind at the deepest level. Seeing that what's in your mind is the source of your happiness, and what's in your mind is the source of your problems. Just those words are intense, but this is literally what the Buddha is saying. So once you get used to this, you're practicing, now you can get to the deepest one, you know. But the trouble is with this one, of course, because it's dealt with so intensely in all the literature, and it's got a whole way of talking, you know. It's very hard for us to unpack it and put it in modern words that somehow is comprehensible for us. So let's just look at it, okay? See if we can make sense of it. So one way of looking at it is in terms of what they, you know, in the Buddhist discussion, they talk about the two truths. The world is full of millions of different phenomena, things conventionally existent. We have cups and toilets and, you know, floors and houses and thermoses and people, you know. And what Buddha is saying is this root delusion, this ignorance. The colloquial term for it is ego grasping. Like I said, in this hierarchy of neuroses, attachment effectively is a day-to-day problem. On the basis of that one, there's aversion. On the basis of this, you've got your jealousy and your other dramas. But the root one that informs all of these is known as, colloquial as ego grasping. But known technically as simply ignorance. This kind of root delusion, they say. The basis of all the others. This primordial, mistaken sense of self. Maripa in Tibetan, unawareness. So ego grasping is a really nice phrase for it. So we see it, I mean, before we go into the more details, we can see the symptoms of it all the time. When we really, you know, not to mention when you get nearly run over by a car, panic arises. When someone hurts you or is mean to you, panic arises. You know, when you don't get, you know, just even ordinary, every time we don't get what we want or something bad happens or whatever, or even you could say the boredom, you know, they're the symptoms of this mistaken sense of I. They're the symptoms, the indications of the deeper problem of this assumption of an I. A mistaken assumption about this I that's very concrete, very fixed, and the irony, of course, of it is that it's kind of like separate. There's a feeling of a separate I, lonely, separate I. That's why there's so much attachment to get what that I wants, to fill up the gaping hole. So, to unpack this one, of course, finally to really comprehend this one, you have to have your single pointed concentration to get to the deepest levels of this one. Because the mind at the grosser level, at the conceptual level of day-to-day thinking, is just not powerful enough to really unpack and unravel it. That's why in the long term, we have to get to this subtler level of mind. Like I keep saying, a level of consciousness, a level of cognition that we simply don't posit is existing in our materialist models of the mind. This is why it's so abstract. It sounds so abstract to us. It's a subtle level of mind that doesn't rely upon gross conceptuality. That happens to be, like I was mentioning before, the bonus of when you're in that state, once you've got that single pointedness, just when a bonus of it is that you're tasting the bliss and clarity of your own actual consciousness. Because your mind even then is temporarily free of all the neuroses, free of all the dramas, free of all the fear-based states of mind. So all these negative states of mind, as I was saying, they're based in fear. And the way to finally eradicate that is to eradicate this root one. So in the context of the two truths Buddhism talks about, things have a conventional nature and an ultimate nature. They exist conventionally, and then they have an ultimate nature. And these two really come together, but on the face of it, they seem opposite. So like I said, that you can posit trillions of things in the universe, countless things. So to really begin, and what Buddha's saying is, having all these delusions, then, as I'm saying, we see all of these phenomena, people, things, houses, everything, through the lenses of these mistaken views. So always misconceiving things, not understanding things, not seeing things properly, overestimating, underestimating. So the key one of the key phenomena we need to focus on, that we are overestimating or underestimating, is our own self. Our own self. So the Buddhist approach would be that everything, he says, everything exists conventionally. There is a chair, there is a thermos. You state it, you name it, you define it, then you discuss how it actually exists in this ultimate sense. So let's take the phenomenon then called I. Called I, self. Where self or I or person, they're terms that are all used to refer to this, we're an example of that kind of phenomenon. We're a person. An ant is a person, a dog is a person from the Buddhist perspective. A mind possessor. The term sentient being in Tibetan is mind possessor. Buddhist psychology refers to all beings, by the way, not just humans. Ants and dogs and other beings we can't even see. They're all called mind possessors. And so we're an example of one of those, and we're an example of, well, a person, a self. Okay, so what is it? What is this mistake that we're making, Buddha says, that's rooted in fear, karma, sowing seeds in the mind, then ripen in suffering, and endlessly continuing in samsara, life after life after life after life after life, he says. That's his trip. How do we end this? How do we quit samsara? How do we give up suffering and its causes? This is still the wisdom wing. No discussion about compassion yet. We're going to get into that, hopefully. So, there's different levels. Okay, so these two words are like the summary, the shorthand for these two ways that things exist. They talk about. So the term dependent arising or interdependence. Just dependent arising is an odd phrase, we mightn't use that, but interdependent, that's a word we all get. Things exist interdependently. But this is dealt with in massive depth here. This has gone to an incredible, clear analysis about, and to understand what dependent arising means and how things exist as dependent arisings, is the way they'd say it, is crucial for understanding this other one, this ultimate reality of things, which they refer to in the shorthand as emptiness. So this can totally throw us, completely cosmic. So we've really got to get our head around the way these words are used, It's crucial if we want to understand what Buddhism is saying. And all the stuff we've talked about so far leads to this. This is like university level, you could say. So different levels at which things exist interdependently. And the one I want to discuss here is the sort of three main levels. And this is the second one, which is not the subtlest, it's not the final meaning of these words that Buddha taught, the teachings about emptiness. It's not the subtlest, but it's a really tasty, interesting concept. What he's saying is, everything that exists interdependently in relation to its parts. Everything exists in dependence upon its bits and pieces. Everything's made of bits and pieces. So what he says about the self, and he says that we do it with everything, but let's use the example of the phenomenon called I, self. What he says is, based on this deep neurotic misconception called ego grasping, which gives rise to attachment and the rest. What it causes us to believe 1,000,000,000% every second, so deep inside, we don't even notice it. And that's why even as we hear these words, it sounds so abstract, because we don't recognize that this is going on all the time. Because of this ego grasping, because of this primordial misconception in the mind, Buddha says, we totally believe 1,000,000,000,000,000,000,000% every millisecond that there is, among all these parts, so here the parameters of Robina, would you agree? The parameters of Robina are like sort of here, isn't it? Really? Minus the clothing. So the parts generally of a person is the body and the mind, isn't it? Let's just use Buddha's view. There is a consciousness which is not physical, and then you've got the body parts. So you've got the body parts and the mind parts. And if you added them all up, there's going to be pretty few million bits and pieces. You know, all the bits and pieces of the body and all the different thoughts and moments of mind. Many parts. They're all made of many parts. We're made up of many parts. So what he says is, because of this ego grasping, we 1 billion% utterly assume, and all our behaviour, neurotic behaviour, proves this assumption, but we don't notice it because it's so primordial, that we believe 1 billion% that here, among all these parts of body and mind that make up Robina, there is a special part, like the boss part, like the landlord part, the puppeteer part, the one that runs the show part, the boss part. There is among all the other parts this boss part, and that boss part is called I. Now, our daily language, without analysis, is completely fine. I have a nose, I did this, I have that, I'm sitting on a cushion. You know, I am this, I'm fat, I'm blah, I'm a Buddhist nun, I'm 79 or whatever. I'm not 79, I'm 72, whatever I am. Doesn't matter, whatever, it doesn't matter, whatever. You understand? I is the central player in our head, isn't it? I is the central player in our head. We can see when anger comes and jealousy, I is the absolute central player, this massive, massive, looming I. We have a feeling, even as we say the word now, there's this deepest feeling. It's depending on if you're blissful and happy, you've got a light feeling of an I. If you're depressed and or bored, then there's a feeling of a boring I, you know. But there's a vivid, constant, hello, darlings. Hello.
Fancy some Buddhism.
There's this instant, intense, continuous, unceasing, always present, never-ending, is there not, feeling of an I, and that's the central word we use. Everything we see and do in our life is in relation to this central player. So it seems like a complete cosmic joke to say that what Buddha is saying is, we believe there's a separate I in there. We believe there's a separate I in there. What's going on?
Curious children. Curious little girls.
Okay.
2 little eyes.
That's right. So the job is to do the analysis here, and the Buddha's telling us, I'm sorry guys, there isn't one. So clearly we can't believe that, because he says all our fears, all our dramas, all our attachment, all our anger, all the misery in our lives is based on the assumption of the presence in here somewhere of that real, solid, definite, concrete, absolute, existing me. Now these words maybe sound completely bizarre, I have no idea.
Sorry.
You want something?
So have you heard my words?
Yes.
Okay, any questions? I can go on for this the next, we can talk about this for the next year.
You weren't
Pardon?
right there.
Pardon?
Aren't you going to keep going?
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the distractions to calm down because we can't concentrate. Okay. So, have you heard the words I'm saying? You've got the words, a little bit you've heard the words, right? Mm-hmm. It sounds like a joke. I mean, it sounds like absurd to say there is no I. But then the key point is to understand what he means by no I, because it's easy to say there is no I is blatantly absurd. Mm-hmm. So it's the whole point he's making is, one of the points he's saying is, there is an I, but not the way we think. We've got a complete misconception. And this is the subtlest mistake. I mean, to see the mistake of attachment is pretty hard. I mean, this goes to incredibly subtle levels. All the other delusions are constant, always there, informing everything we think and do and say. They're the lenses through which we see everything, and they're ancient, actually ancient. This is the root one. This is the one that informs all the others. So to hear the words very simply, there is no inherent I, which is the words they would use in Buddhism, because we don't even get the meaning of what that means. It's completely just, the commonest thing is to think, oh, well, there's no I. Buddha says there's no I. Buddha says everything is empty, there's no I. It's utterly abstract to our minds. So the analysis we have to do is really quite difficult. So even to get that idea, so, okay. So even to start, so we start to argue with it. We start to look at even just the concept of it. I'll use a simple example and try and just see if you can follow me, okay? So if I were to say to you in a very simple way, I'd look over here and I'd say I have a thermos and an iPad, okay? I have a thermos and an iPad. So obviously, if words come out of a person's mouth, it is quite helpful if they can be true words. I mean, that would be really lovely, isn't it? And this is part of our problem. Most of the words come out of our mouth are the expression of all our neurosis. So it's really hard to know what the hell's going on. But if I say to you, I have a thermos and an iPad, then you hear the sound coming out of this mouth over here. Your eyes would go in this direction, and you would observe this shape and colour, that shape and colour, and this one. And then you would deduce, this is called the I. There's one phenomenon called I, right? There's one phenomenon called thermos, and there's one phenomenon called iPad. That's pretty reasonable. And you would immediately prove that my words were true. Thank you, Robina. I see that you're right. You tick the box and we all agree. I do indeed. There is an I that possesses a thermos and an iPad. Nothing special. So for that to be true, and this sounds like labouring the point, but it's a crucial point to do this analysis that the Buddha says we have to do. And we do it in subtle meditation. In order to say something that's true, if you say there's, three things, you have to point to three things. So I've just stated three things, haven't I? I is one, would you agree? And it has to be distinctly separate from the other phenomenon, doesn't it? So if you say, I have a thermos, just even keep one phenomenon. There's an I that is one phenomenon, you agree with that? And there's another phenomenon called a thermos. So that in this simple sense, in order for them to function, they don't depend on each other, do they? Do you accept that? The thermos could break and Robina's still fine. Robina could walk out the door, the thermos doesn't collapse. They are separate from each other. Do we accept that? They're separate phenomena. So that means there are two. Well, I have a hand and a foot. Do you agree with that? Yeah. Come and look over here. There's the hand, right? And there's the foot. Do you agree? Well, what's the name of the third phenomenon? What did I say? I. So I've said three things, haven't I? I, hand, foot. Do you accept that? Do you accept that? Like I have an I, thermos, table. It's three phenomena, isn't it? And here, if it's got to be the same thing. Buddha's saying that if that's a true statement, I have to point out three separate phenomena. So there's my foot. I can cut my foot off. My hand will still be able to hold the cup. Do you accept that? Yeah. And if I cut my hand off, my foot is separate. They don't depend on each other. In a simple sense, for their function in day-to-day life, they don't depend on each other, do they? Would you agree with that? Would you agree with that, everybody? So then please point out the third phenomenon that is not the hand and is not the foot and is not all the other pieces. The self, the I. So where is that? That's the point. They hear this stuff for 40 years in the monasteries, and I mean that seriously, and then they go meditate for another 40 and hopefully get it before they die, Because these words sound absurd. Like, on the face of it, ordinary language, coming into this, hearing this out of the blue, sounds like a complete intellectual load of rubbish, having no meaning, no basis in any reality whatsoever. The Buddha's saying that the belief, it sounds so absurd to us, the belief in a separate, real, concrete little I that runs the show, which is what I've just expressed, this is the source of our suffering. And that's why he argues with the Hindus and the Christians and the Jews, who actually do posit the third component called the soul. That's what Buddha's talking about. He says there's no such thing. He's not being rude, but he has all this philosophical analysis that, you know, that you need to use logic to analyze how there isn't such a phenomenon. That's why he would argue with the concept of a creator. It's the same philosophical position, that we believe there has to be a person who runs the show. The same inside here. We utterly believe it, totally 100%. Our words express it. And so the point he's making is the sign of it is when it has a panic attack, when something goes wrong, the fear rises like a sleeping lion, like I said. And because we're so familiar with all this, we just think it's normal. So we reinforce this view. But the Buddha would say, there is no that independent I. So then?
But what about the whatever it is that has collected all this karma and has reincarnated?
Exactly, that we can, exactly, I understand. This is where, exactly.
So isn't that a consciousness? Or
That's a consciousness, yeah, that's not an I. That's a consciousness.
to that consciousness?
No.
Like you can't point to a soul.
You can't, no, you can. You can certainly talk about it and fix it and purify it and get rid of the delusions in it. You can't see it and touch it because it's not physical, but it is a phenomenon that does exist. There is a self that does exist, but not the way we think. There is a consciousness that does exist. There is a body that does exist. There is a thermos that does exist. This is a way to say it. What Buddha's saying is, we don't realize we're not seeing the phenomena properly. So there is an I that does exist, but not the way we think. There's one way to put it.
Okay.
There's one way to put it. So then we have to do this analysis and then do the meditating to get the realization of the truth of this, which is what cuts the ego grasping, what cuts the fears and cuts all the rubbish. So the consciousness continues from life to life. Conventionally, I mean, the way they say it is conventionally there is an I. You know, conventionally, who are you? I'm Robina, hi, you know, that's fine. But what we do is we don't realize, like I'm saying the whole time with all the earlier delusions, what we're doing all the time is seeing everything through the lenses of these neuroses. So the attachment causes the thermos to look far more delicious than it really is. The aversion, let's say it's my boyfriend's thermos and he's now left me, so of course I hate his thermos as well. It'll appear ugly to me. So the ugly aversion for the thermos makes it look more ugly than it really is. Well, this ego grasping informs both of those and makes the thermos, and this is the way they say it, appear to exist out there from its own side as the way it appears to me. I don't know, I'm not seeing it properly. So the analysis we're doing here is not the subtlest understanding, but it's a really good stepping stone. But the thing is, to see even just this argument, we all instinctively believe there's an I in there. We say the words, don't we? I am this, I am that, I did not do this, how dare you do that to me? Or we say, you know, that's my, I say I, pointing here, have a hand over there. It's like two separate things, isn't it? It feels like two separate things. Would you agree? People? Are we communicating?
Yeah.
And we feel it. There's a little owner in there who owns the breasts and owns the nose and owns the anger and owns the love and owns the cup. No, not the cup. Owns the hand, the pieces. So we feel like that one. We believe that one. This is not the subtlest meaning of emptiness. But the Buddha would say we need to see how it's not true. How it's a fantasy, how it's a mistake, and it's the root mistake. And as long as it's there, we will always suffer. We will always have attachment. We will always have anger. We will always have all the delusions. We'll continue to get reborn till the cows come home, you know, with suffering. This is his view. That's his approach to the whole deal, you know. So,
For the time being, this is my hand.
the point is that he's making is you're asserting in that statement there are two phenomena. So point out the I. This is the point. Simple talk. Where is the I that owns the hand?
In my consciousness. In my
Oh, so okay, good. So it's in your consciousness, you think?
my mind, yeah.
So there's a piece of you. A piece of you is called I.
And
What's-
that permeates my body.
Oh, okay. So it's your whole body as well.
It permeates my body.
Your eye does.
I have a hand.
So your eye, so can you try to, if there is something existing, we have to name it, we have to define it, and we have to give it its function. So what is the function of this eye?
To manage.
Oh, good. No, okay, we got to it. Thank you. That's how we all say it. Perfect. That's how we all say it. Yeah. Okay. Let's do a little
To pull the weeds from the...
No, exactly, I understand. I hear you exactly. Let's prove how it's nonsense.
Okay.
Well, you mightn't see it's nonsense, but we'll try. I do this little thing, okay, we'll do this little thing. Let's say, would we call this action Robina holding a glass in her left hand? We would, wouldn't we? Okay, good. Well, let's unpack this and to try to see what the role of the piece called I would be. So if I've forgotten how to do this, you'd have a lot of hard work to get me to learn to do it again, wouldn't you? So you'd have to start educating me. So what you'd have to do is start writing down all the instructions, and the first lot of instructions will be to do what the body should do. So when we start to analyse, there's going to be lots of the parts of the body, aren't there? The thumb, the finger, the this, the wrist, the that, the ligaments, the blah, the elbow. All these millions of pieces of my body are all playing their role. If you're being really rigorous about it, there'll be very many parts of the body. Do we accept that? You'd have to be, and if you really have to tell me how to do it again, you've got to be really accurate. Well, no, your index finger should do this, and your pinky does that, and your thumb this, and your wrist that. There's many parts, but because we're totally trained in it, we don't even analyse it. But if we did have to analyse it, we'd break it down, and we'd have all the component parts of the body. Do we accept that? Yes. Now we've got the main player here. Obviously, it's the mind. Is that a hand? No. Okay, just a stretch. All right. So now we've got the main player, because if this were a dead body, with no point, what the hell, give up. So this body is imbued with the consciousness. So then we've got to look at all the parts of my mind that have to do their job. So clearly the first one is my eye consciousness and my ear consciousness. I've got to listen to your instructions. Then I've got to look. Then I've got all the parts of my mental consciousness. Like one has to be to remember what you're saying. Another one has to be to pay attention. So there's attention, memory, concentration.
Balance. 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 In your mind.
Well, that would be many parts of your mind making note. There'll be one called recognition, attention, intention, all these many parts of our mind that at the moment are all working overtime on autopilot. We don't pay attention. It's only when one piece of your mind is missing that you've got to work hard to get it back. So they're all working because they're trained. Many parts of your mind combining with your hand and your body to end up with a simple experience called holding a glass in my left hand. Do we agree with this analysis?
Yes.
Good. So I've mentioned quite a few parts, and I'm sure there'll be many more to mention, that are all doing their job. Would we agree with this?
Yes.
So now the question, which already you've answered, because that's what we believe. What role would another part, a specific, separate, independent part, called I, what role is left over for it? Can you get the question? Good, what?
To make it...
To manage. She said it, to manage. The one, the boss. That's exactly right, the boss. We believe there's an I in there who... So, okay, the Buddhists would say the main boss here in all of this is the thought called intention. It's the start. It's even the meaning of karma. Lama Zopa says, everything exists on the tip of the wish, the thought. Like I even mentioned yesterday, I will not walk out that door until I have the thought, I will walk out the door. Because we're so programmed, 99% of what we do are on autopilot. We don't notice the millions of parts all playing their role. Do you understand the point? So intention is the first one. If there's no intention, and intention means I will. So the main player here is not the I, it's the thought, I will. It's a thought, not an I, it's a thought. It's part of the mind. I will hold the glass. Then I do all the other things. So the main player is I will. Then all the other bits. But we feel, like you answered, we feel and utterly believe without question. And that's what he says we've got to do, is to start to question this. That there is another player in there who is the boss part, who does the intending and does the lifting and and that's what our words express. Buddha says it's a complete misconception. You won't find such a part, he says. So it sounds abstract, and in a sense we go, well, who cares, It doesn't seem like it's got much to do with the price of fish. But the Buddha says this is the root delusion. This is the source of all dramas, all suffering, all dog realms, all hell realms, all everything, all the suffering of all samsara, all universes. This is the root delusion. So it is pretty abstract because it doesn't, I mean, it's like a joke to hear it. Are we communicating here?
Yeah, go on.
What? What?
Yes, yes.
Okay, go, Uzi.
What is the feeling?
What's really?
The feeling. You said the feeling, the word feeling. This is all very nice analyzing, thinking, and analyzing, understanding, and breaking it into pieces.
Well, you've got to start with that, don't you?
Yeah, that's, which is great, I understand. But there's also a mechanism called things that I feel.
What, but that's got nothing to do with here, though. This is not relevant here.
Not right.
No. Because feel, I mean, okay. If we've got a wrong recipe for something, if we're not sure what the problem with the recipe is, we have to be very intellectual to analyse it, to unpack all the components. That's what we're doing here. Eventually, if we take this analysis, and we've done all the previous work of controlling our body, controlling our speech, done lots of practice, done meditating, walked into our mind, developed to an incredible degree of clarity as well as concentration, then we go to this level, and this is just one tiny example of the analysis. And then we do this at a deepest level in meditation to really try to analyse and to see how there is not this aspect of ourself. So I mean, it does sound all intellectual, you're right, but it has to be that level in order to unpack the eons of mistakes, Buddha says, the misconceptions that we've had for so long that cause our suffering.
Well, I mean, there is a separate part of us. It's the part of us that is alive. Because if you were dead, like you said, there'd be no teaching.
That's your consciousness. That's your consciousness. That's your consciousness. That's your consciousness.
Right.
Not your I. Your consciousness.
How can that not be your I?
I know. That's the whole point. Honey, that's the whole point. I mean, this is the whole point of the discussion. And it might not be evident on the face of it, but that's the whole point of this discussion.
Robina?
Yes, wait.
Could you tell us something about the self that does exist?
Well, this is very interesting because the way Lama Zopa puts it, when we finally realise the truth of what I'm saying here, let's just, never mind, let's just take it as a given for the moment. When you're a yogi and you finally realise you've clearly seen that this is true, and we're talking subtle levels of your consciousness after many lifetimes of work, no doubt, then, as Lama Zopa puts it, when you've realised the word emptiness, I'm going to discuss the word emptiness in a minute. For anybody who's read some of the Buddhist stuff and practice, and you need to understand this word properly, it's very confusing to us. When we've realised that there isn't that I, in other words, realise emptiness, he says, it's as if there's no I, but there is. But what does exist is so subtle, it's as if it's an illusion. So that's the way they say it. The words they use is there is no inherent, independent, separate little I, but there is an independent, interdependent, there is an interdependent I, but you can't pin anything down. So the hard part is to get how emptiness implies there is dependent arising. We have to understand dependent arising, how things exist interdependently. That's the way to say it. And they say when we've realised this, that's when there's no longer fear. This is when your sense of I, in other words, okay, even when you yes, Tsiki.
Would it be valid, according to the Buddhist thought, to say that I exist as a mountain exists? It's the same kind of existence that I...
In the sense of taking a phenomenon and simply analysing its parts, then it's the same discussion. Yeah. Because everything exists like this. So it's fairly, we've got a cup, have I got a cup? Somebody got a cup with like a handle. No, I mean, it's good to have a handle. Like, listen, okay, imagine this is a cup with a handle. We say my cup has a handle, don't we? Do you agree? Well, it's very simple, isn't it? No, more simple. This glass has a base. Do you agree this glass has a base? So there's two phenomena, glass and base. It sounds like it, two words. Well, then remove the base and where's the glass? You can't have a glass without a base. So you can't have an eye without a hand. You can't have an eye without a mind. You can't have an eye without all the parts. But you won't find an eye among the parts. Because it's just, finally, it's just the name we give to those parts. And it's kind of very relaxing. Eye isn't, finally they say eye or glass are merely names we use to refer to those parts. But we have overstated the glass. We overstate the eye. We overstate everything. We see more there than there really is the way to say it. And so we're these drama queens about everything. We over-exaggerate everything. And we cling mightily to this concept of there being a glass that has a base. But you can't separate from the base from the glass. It's obvious. If you remove all the parts, and this is even a meditation they say you can do, you literally do an analysis. You're looking for the eye. It sounds so hilarious to look for the eye, you know. The eye that we think is there, which is the owner, which is separate. So you start breaking down yourself into your component parts. You're going to have hundreds of parts of your mind, and you're going to have hundreds of parts of your body. But the feeling we have is we're going to kind of end up exposing this little naked, little self-existent little I in there, who's now been found out as the boss inside there. That's the feeling, and our words express this. At the deepest beings in our bones, we believe this. When we say, I am not that, you did that to me, I don't deserve it. That is the feeling of a little I in there that's separate from everything else. It's so, the belief in it, the Buddha says, is eons old. And it's so primordial. And it causes all the fears and all the dramas, he says. When you hear that, it's quite interesting. Here, intellectually, it seems so abstract. But he says the belief in this fantasy, independent, separate I. This was the job of these Indians before the Buddha. They're the ones, as the Dalai Lama says, who these amazing Indians 500 years before the Buddha, maybe 1,000 years before. These extraordinary thinkers, you know. This was their main thing. They were the ones who began this incredible investigation, as he said, into the nature of self. That's what they did. That's why they came up with this single point of concentration that gets you to these subtle levels of mind, to do all this unpacking and unraveling to the subtlest degree. Can we hear those words? Because it indicates the intensity of this, you know. And then Buddha came out of that tradition, and then he diverged in his own direction about the very nature of this I. They call it a self, an Atman. The Christians call it a soul. I presume the Jews talk about a soul too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah? There's something there. And there's all these different views about there's something even subtle, you know, that's there. There has to be something. And this discussion of dependent arising and emptiness, which seem like contradictory concepts, actually come together when we get a proper understanding of it. And all the stuff we've talked about so far leads to this, you know. You can't just leap into this one without some background, otherwise it's just cosmic nonsense, you know. So the thing is, it seems so abstract, and it doesn't seem like, you know, as you just said, where's the feeling part? What's good at the price of fish? What's it got to do with life? It seems so abstract. Well, when we understand the flip side of the interdependent I, an I that exists in dependence upon parts, an I that exists in dependence upon this and that, but you can't pin something down, and in delusions want to pin something down as real, permanent and solid. So, you know, the way to apply this philosophical view in daily life is when, let's say, you're about to have a fight with your friend, this is when ego's kicking in. Don't have to wait for a car to run you over, for ego grasping to rise up like a lion. You're sitting there having a chat, you know, like I said before, Annika and I having a chat. And then suddenly she insults me or says something that I'm offended by. That's when the sleeping lion of the belief in the I rises, isn't it? Oh, I did not do that. How dare you say that about me, we'll say. The heart is beating, the blood is racing, you're feeling distressed. That's the symptom of this belief in the fantasy I. Panic, you know. All the delusions are the symptom of this neurotic belief in a neurotic I. So the way to counteract it in ordinary life, as our mothers would say, you know, well, see things from her point of view. Put yourself in her shoes. So the moment I see something from her point of view, that'll calm my poor neurotic I down. But as soon as the I, this mistaken ignorance rises up, everything becomes like rock solid, doesn't it? I 100% believe what I'm saying. It feels completely frozen in space. She is this, she did that, she said this, he is this, they are that. It's so rock solid concrete. But by being more spacious, seeing things from another point of view, that's applying interdependence. And so therefore it won't be so rock solid. So it's when things are concrete, fundamentalism, you know, concrete, solid, real, panic-stricken, narrow-minded, all of those are symptoms of the presence of this belief in the fantasy I. And therefore all the fears we have, all the dramas, all the fears. And they say in Buddhist psychology, people often say, where's fear in Buddhist psychology? Well, it's the nature of all the neuroses, in particular, this root delusion. There's this, yeah, go on.
Who sows the seeds of karma?
The word I is fine. We have to use it.
Is it the body that's...
No, it's the mind. That's the, okay, the part, if you want to look at which part of you sows seeds, which part of you, you know, made of mind and body, then it's mind that does the job. It's mind that
carries through to...
And mind carries on to the next life, yeah.
Mind?
Yeah, consciousness carries on. Consciousness or mind, they're the same.
Oh, okay.
Consciousness or mind. But the thing is there, what's happening here is, as soon as we say, you know, we say, among the parts of an I, they've got body and mind. And we're trying to find the I among those parts. Then we can't. But then we go, oh, well, phew, at least I've got something. I've got a body and a mind. No. The I, the way to say it properly, finally, when we really understand this stuff, that I is merely a name we use to refer to these parts. And then we can kind of, oh, you mean I've got parts? Well, no. Body is merely a name we use to refer to those parts. Oh, I have an ear, do I? No. Ear is merely a name we use to refer to its parts. And everything you posit in the universe is like that. So it's sort of a bit like, they say it's like an illusion, that we would say it's like smoke and mirrors. There is an I, they say, there is a body, there is a mind, there is a thermos, there is karma, there is good, there is bad, there is up, there is down, but not in the way we think. When we say that we can't, in other words, we can't tell the difference between real glass and fantasy glass. We can't tell the difference between real I and fantasy I. We can't tell the difference between real body and pretend body. We can't tell the difference between real up and pretend up. We don't realize that these delusions are, as Lama puts it, all these delusions, and in particular this root delusion, decorates on top of everything that we perceive, experience, layers upon layers of characteristics that aren't there. So attachment decorates deliciousness onto the thermos. Aversion decorates ugliness onto the thermos. Ego grasping or ignorance decorates kind of thermosness onto the thermos. It's kind of like that. So the whole point, like I began, the whole point the Buddha is making, everything finally comes down to everything's created by our concepts. Created by our concepts. And he's talking about eons, ancient, down to the subtlest level of concepts. So the whole job of using single point of concentration in the long-term approach to this job, most of us won't do that in this life, is to unpack and unravel ever more subtly, ever more subtly, ever more subtly, ever more subtly, all these layers and layers and layers of decorations, layers and layers of projections, layers and layers of conceptual elaborations. This is literally what the job is, literally. I mean, even to hear the words, this might be helpful. I don't know, maybe it just sounds ridiculous. Are we communicating here?
Yes.
Yeah, a little bit. But in general, instead of being bored when you start to practice, what we've got to, if we really do make, and I think yours is such a good point, I swear, such a good point. Because if we only go to the surface of whatever our practice is, you only go so far, then boredom is the natural consequence. So we all know that, when you really work at anything, then you might get exhausted, but you'll never get bored. So this is where we're really practicing. At each step of the way, you're happy when you get to grade 1. Sure, we're talking Bach level, we're talking Buddha. Don't hold your breath, babies. But you don't wait till you get to Buddha to get happy. But each step of the way, you really enjoy the process. And each step of the way, you can get confidence That the little bit of less attachment you have now as opposed to last year, you've moved a little bit forward and you enjoy where you're at. You learn you've got a long way to go, baby. You're only in grade 1 music, but you're really enjoying grade 1. And now you can excitedly anticipate grade 2. But if you just float along, you won't taste that. So that's where feeling, if you like, comes in. If you're really engaged in whatever you're engaging in, it's hard work. Whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, it's hard work. You've got to test your limits, go beyond your limits, beyond your comfort zone. Then you're tasting your own potential. Then each step of the way you can really see. You can prove that less attachment means more happiness. Less anger means more courage. And if it's not that, if it's merely just boredom, then clearly we're not doing it properly, you know. Long way to go. But it's okay, he's got to have a goal. Well, it's nice to have a goal. What, Uzi?
Neil.
Who? Oh, you're Neil. Where's Uzi? Who's he? He's not here. Oh, sorry, I'm getting... Oh, you're Neil, right. I'm confused. Sorry, go on, Dave.
Anyway, it's also not Neil, so it's okay.
Oh, okay, good. Oh, okay. Go on, Neil.
The thing with the eye, the subtle eye, that you said, is it has something to do with attachment, that I am not my mind, I'm not the body, I'm not what I'm feeling?
Well, speaking just technically, attachment is a delusion. Ego grasping that believes in the fantasy I is the deeper the delusion that gives rise to the attachment to get what that fantasy I wants. They're related. And attachment is the symptom of believing in this little I that's always needy and always hungry and always empty and always wants something more. So attachment's like the main part that tries to fulfill the I's needs every day. It's a way of saying it.
Okay. And why, when I use the example you gave, the argument, I'm arguing with my friend, and then I'm trying to see things from this.
Start again, Neil.
You said that you gave an example. That if I'm fighting with my friend,
yes,
and then suddenly my eyes start to...
Yeah, a little sense of I, this I, that, how dare you do that to me, all upset, yeah.
Exactly. And then I'm seeing things from his perspective.
Yes.
And suddenly I become...
Precisely, immediately.
Why?
Because you've gone against the... Okay, that's a really good question. Well, let me try and explain. What the Buddha's saying is, if we really look at the virtuous states of mind... Okay, no, forget that. In general, his view of how the universe exists, and this goes in, I mean, I'm just touching on the surface of the surface in the words I'm saying, okay? But the way reality is that everything exists interdependently. So when everything's working beautifully, even a building, if all the right amount of cement and right amount of wood and right amount of screws, the building will stay up. It's kind of reasonable, isn't it? If everything's working well and all doing their jobs, everything works interdependently. So if the harmony of the universe, if all the elements are working nicely, everything works well, things are working intricately, interdependently. That's reality, he says. Now, in a mind, virtue is in a sense in sync with reality. Reality is that, okay, right at the beginning, okay, even this, okay. The Buddha's saying, when you've achieved your truth, when you've finally removed all the delusions from Neil's mind and you've become a Buddha, this long-term goal, how you'd be, one of the simple ways of saying it would be, there'd be no longer a sense of a separate I, literally at all. In a sense, your sense of I would encompass every being. You'd have infinite wisdom, infinite clarity, infinite compassion, infinite empathy, because now finally you're in touch with reality. So getting the wisdom of seeing that, of being in touch with interdependence, that's the character of even the virtuous states of mind. So when we're more in sync with, so when you are seeing things from my point of view and I'm seeing things from your point of view, that's called virtue. It brings peace because it's more in touch with reality. But whereas I is not reality, there's no such thing as a separate I that has no dependence on anything else, and that's how I feel. That's why, look at a person who's really selfish. Forget ourselves. All they do, this big lumbering I blasting through the universe, getting what I want, stumbling over everybody else, smashing, kicking. You understand? That's the symptom of believing in a separate I. That's why we have self-pity. That's why we get angry. That's why we get attached. That's why we get upset. That's why we harm others, because we have this monstrous maniac in here that we believe exists there, which is a lie. We're believing in a lie. And that means we're not in touch with interdependence and reality. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Why did we create this fantasy?
So say it again. What?
Why did we create this fantasy?
We didn't. It's always been.
How it
It didn't start.
Yeah, this is what I want.
The same question. Again, whoever asked yesterday, when did it begin? It's the same answer. Why do you want a first moment? That's what's fascinating. We all believe it. We all believe in a first moment.
Is there a evolution
No,
in
but
Buddhism?
I think
Right.
about the purpose.
There is no purpose. It's delusion. So therefore, you know, it's natural that we will ask, well, it's ridiculous, Buddha says, that we should ask for a first moment, but we all want a first moment. So given that we want a first moment, we have to then try and argue how there can't be a first moment. Because why? Because can we see in ordinary daily language that we accept the law of cause and effect? Everything we know, even if it's the smallest thing, a series of things have come together, and then the end result is a thermos, a flower. You know, the simplest thing is made of, got causes, hasn't it? So everything is the product of causes. Would you agree with that? So then even if we think about consciousness, okay, and we think of this ego grasping, which let's just say it is in our consciousness right now. Let's say in my mind there is this belief in this fantasy I. So it is a state of mind called ego grasping, and I can see that it does exist in my mind now, this main mistake. This is the boss mistake. Okay, so now let's see how, so then, okay, so that has come from where? The simplest cause of it is from the previous moment of that ego grasping. So where does that come from? Well, or even more simple, forget that one, forget just all the delusions. This is Buddha's point. Why are you angry, Robina? Well, then for me, the normal reason is because Panos was mean to me. No, that's silly, Robina, don't be silly. You're angry, he says, because you were angry before. So this anger is the product of previous anger. Oh, well, what you mean I was angry before? Yep. Where'd that come from? Previous anger. And where'd that come from? Previous anger. And where'd that come from? Previous anger. And you get back to the first moment of conception, and the Buddha would say that comes from a previous tendency to be angry, and you keep going back, and you will never, you can't find a first moment of anger. Because that means you found something that didn't have a cause. And that's impossible. So that's why Buddha would assert that in fact consciousness and matter and universes are literally beginningless.
It's a bit like the chicken and the egg.
Precisely, it is like that. So this is what's fascinating. You could argue, Buddha would suggest, you know, that the mistaken, the philosophical view in our mind has created the view of the creator. The view of a creator is a first cause, and you don't ask where did that come from, because we just say it always has existed, you know. But the Buddha would argue with that philosophically. I mean, all his reasons and things. So even as I'm saying my mind is beginningless, it sounds like nonsense, because we have this deep instinct that assumes a first moment, and that's why he would say one of the ways our ignorance functions is not believing in, not having a sense of cause and effect. There's an absolute. There's some kind of absolute. You know, and the sense of I we have is like an absolute. The sense of first moment or God is an absolute. And he says things can't exist like that. That's how he says. You know, we have to look into that. You know.
But
So
that's a question.
About when did it begin? Where did it begin? Why? Ego grasping. That's right. We didn't. It's beginningless. But still, there's no other. Once you get that, you don't ask why. You can't. There's no benefit.
I need to run away from that.
We need to recognise it, and then we need to counteract it with the antidote. And that's where it's interesting as well. Okay. Okay. If we can get this view, get the Buddhist idea that all these unhappy emotions are based in being thoughts, conceptual stories. Can we get that even intellectually here? Yes. Okay. So what Buddha's saying is once you've counteracted this deepest misconception, then you've cut the root of everything. You've cut the root of all the suffering. You've stopped the motor going. So once we realise it's a misconception, let me again use a really simple example, you know. Let's say, you know, I say, oh, this is a Samsung here. And and you say, don't be silly, Robin, it's an iPad. And I go, oh, you're right. Oh, what a silly girl. It's an iPad. So what happened there was it is a Samsung is a thought. Would you agree it's a thought? And you would agree that this is an iPad is also a thought. So one or other is correct, because we have definitions of things, don't we? So, you know, we'll establish quickly, and I will agree with you, I'm not clinging to it as being a Samsung. I accept my mistake. So the point is, I first had a thought, it is a Samsung. On ordinary conventional reality laws, we realise it's a mistaken conception. You agree? And then you tell me, no, don't be silly, Robina, it's an iPad. And then I agree with you that it's an iPad. And then, so then what happened to the previous thought?
Cancelled.
Cancelled by what?
By the truth.
Thank you. There you go. You've just proved enlightenment. That's the point. Buddha's saying all these emotions, these eons and eons of misconceptions, liars, eons and eons, and we experience them at the level of complete hysterical feeling. But they're just a symptom of the tip of the iceberg. As we do this unpacking, unraveling, using this concentration technique eventually to get to the subtlest level of our own cognition and do all the unpacking and unraveling of these misconceptions, one day we will have, as they say, your first moment of non-conceptual, direct insight into the truth that there is no independent I. And the seeing of that truth is the one that cuts the root of the lie that's been believing in the fantasy I for eons. So from that second, the Buddhist would say, you can't fall back into more suffering. You can only move forward. You've now cut the root, and soon you'll be able to completely cut all the delusions, because they're conceptual thoughts, but they're so subtle, you can't get that realization until you've got this single point of concentration. But the point in Buddhist psychology is all these feelings we have, we live in feelings, we're so much power in feelings. But the feelings, like I've been saying, you know, on both days, all the feelings of anger and feelings of fear and feelings of love and compassion as well, they're the habit, that's all. They're the habit of practicing love and compassion and anger and jealousy for so long that we don't even notice that those feelings are merely the outcropping or the expression of the thoughts at a very deep instinctive level. So it's only when you've got concentration in this meditation technique that you can go more deeply to unpack and unravel at a subtle level these conceptual elaborations that inform the feelings. Are we communicating here? So it's a real subtle level we're talking about. And then to prove logically to us that all the dramas of these emotions are liars, basically. So to hear all that's very interesting, but then you've got to try and remind yourself, what will you be like if you're like this? Well, you'll be fearless, you'll be blissful, you'll be clear, you'll be funny, you'll be wise, you'll be as steady as a rock, you'll be clairvoyant, you'll be compassionate, nothing would make you crazy. You'll be an amazing, marvelous person. Forget all the way to Buddhahood. But even that to me is encouraging, rather than just, you know, be bored. Are we communicating? Yeah. Okay, good. Yes, Neil.
Is there any connection between the biggest eye I got? Say eye, yes?
What do you mean the biggest eye you've got? What do you mean? Sorry, Neil, you're so funny. Start again.
You said the eye is how I glance myself. I mean, how do I see myself? If I have a big eye.
Big eye. Big eye.
Big ego.
Okay, whatever, go on.
Yeah. Does it have any reference to the suffering?
It's the main cause of it, yeah.
So the biggest.
The more you cling to your own sense of a separate self, the more attachment you'll have to get what that self wants, the more panic and anger and drama you'll have when it doesn't get what it wants, the more you'll harm others to get what you want. Look at the world.
Is there any way I can make transformation of this? To make it
Neil, I'm going to faint here. Neil, what do you think I've been talking about these 2 days? Have you not got any kind of clues from tools that I'm suggesting here? No. You haven't heard any tools? Oh, darling, it's all right. Just keep listening. The first step is to control your body and speech and stop following these ridiculous delusions, and then you get to meditate, and then you start getting concentration, and then you learn Buddhist model of the mind, and you start going deep into your mind, lessening these delusions. Darling, that's the job.
Yeah, okay, got it.
I've been saying it a few times. Have you heard me say it?
No, I understand.
That's the job, darling. But you've got to first understand the problem. If you can't identify the problem, you can't find the cause. And if you can't find the cause, you can't find the solution. So by presenting the problem, you actually implies the solution. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. I didn't even get excited, did I?
So, Robina, we could say that the unenlightened mind implies the enlightened mind.
A good point. Yes, it does. It does.
So, delusion goes with mind possessors. It's
Absolutely. Yeah, completely. Mind possessors, yeah, exactly. It's this lovely term in Tibetan for the word we call mind haver. The Tibetan word for the word we say in English, sentient being. What's the word in Greek?
For what? For
Sentient being.
Αισθανόμενα.
Oh, I can never.
Say again?
So it says the same as sentient being, or is it like sentient being? It's a similar term in Greek.
Yes, αισθανόμενα όντα.
That's literally sentient being.
Sentient being.
Okay, well, I like the Tibetan word a lot. Mind possessor. It's so much more direct, isn't it, for sentient being? Because sentient means having consciousness, but much more direct term. A mind possessor, a consciousness possessor. I know, it's true, I know, it's feeling beings, it's not quite accurate, but mind possessor is so accurate. Yeah, by definition, being a mind possessor means you're full of all this nonsense, you know.
We don't, in the Buddhist way of thinking, plants are not something.
In the Buddhist, okay, it's very interesting this. In the Buddhist view, yeah, in the Buddhist view, you won't find anywhere, there's nowhere you won't find sentient beings. The universe is pervaded by trillions of sentient beings. Humans are just a tiny percent. So when you look at our bodies, we're like a walking zoo, basically. There's trillions of beings under our armpit all over the place. They apparently love our faces because the pores are nice and fat, you know. They can kind of hop in there. But we're covered by sentient beings. They're mind possessors for the Buddhist view. All the creatures, all the bugs, all the dust mites, all the animals, and there are others we can't even see. So wherever you go in the universe, you're going to see sentient beings everywhere. So the difference between a flower and you over there, what's your name? Who? Hava. So there's a bunch of 4 elements there. The Buddhist view would be that the universe is made of the 4 elements, the physical world. The flower is the 4 elements. So is your body. The difference between a flower, it might be covered by other sentient beings or living in the flower, and so your body as well. The difference is this piece of 4 elements is imbued with a consciousness. But a flower is not imbued with a consciousness. That would be the difference. They would say that.
And how do they know that? Because they've never seen a flower suffer or something?
Well, that would be, all these teachings that I'm talking about, they're all coming from the experiences of the yogis. We have to accept that these are coming from the experiences of beings who observe this. And we've got to take that as our hypothesis here, don't we? You understand? About life and death and how karma works. It's all coming from the experiences of the great yogis, yeah, and the Buddhas, yeah. That's the idea. So, I mean, there are trillions of sentient beings everywhere. You can't move without harming sentient beings, you know. But they are not themselves sentient beings. That's what they'd say. And all sentient beings are going from all, you know, this is to do with karma now, is all these trillions of sentient beings are going from life to life, being from human to bugs to animals. There's hell beings, there's spirit realms, there's God realms. There's this whole spectrum, Buddha would say, types of sentient beings occupying what they refer to as samsara. So the way they use the word samsara, you've either, you know, it's either you're in samsara if you're living in all these delusions. You've got all these delusions, you're in samsara. But you can also say you're being reborn into different realms in samsara. So, you know, I like to say they're like all these, in this samsara that we're in, it's called the desire realm. And there are like 6 different suburbs. I like to call it that. Buddhists talk about suburbs. So you've got the top suburbs are called like the God realms, and that's equivalent to what the Christians call heaven, and I never know, and the Muslims call paradise, but I can't work out what Jews think. They never tell me. I don't think any Jew has told me ever about heaven.
It's all very...
But I know, but so there's no thing...
world to come.
So there is a world to come?
Yeah, but nobody
Yeah,
tells us
sure.
what it's like.
But what's it called? No one ever tells me.
The world to come.
What's it called? What's it called? What does it mean?
The world to come.
What's-
That's
That's the term.
Yeah,
world
that's
to
the
come.
word.
And when do you go there?
Whenever you die.
And what's it look like? And how do you feel?
It depends.
You don't
If
know.
you were
It
there
depends
or
on
where.
No,
Right.
there's no hell in paradise in
Most about.
Of course
There's
there
no
is.
hell. There's no hell.
He's found. There's not a unified theory.
I can see.
It's a very disunified.
I can see. I can see. Okay, so anyway.
We're all Jewish and we're debating.
I understand that, I know. So in the Buddhist view, you got the top suburbs are like, they're called the God realms, and here they're mainly the result of virtue. That's accumulation of enormous virtue. You're born with your mind very subtle, very radiant, very blissful, and your physical energy is equally very blissful. It's like a light body. And then you get further down the spectrum, and about one of the slightly less interesting suburbs, it's still better than others, is called the human realm. And we've got this, bag of bones. Then you've got what they call the lower realms. You've got the animals, and they're the predominance of the energy called ignorance. Then you've got the spirits who are disembodied, and their minds really, you could say, are conjoined with air energy, and they're like intensely suffering. And they're the predominance of like really intense grasping energy, attachment energy. And then you've got the hell realms, the lowest of the suburbs, whereas like you can almost argue their minds are conjoined with fire energy. And the Buddhist view would be, again, that these sentient beings are not sent there by anybody. We create our own realities. I remember Lama Yeshe said one time, hell is not some place where the devil is waiting, saying, ha ha, I'm waiting for Lama Yeshe. It's literally the manifestation of the negative energy of that suffering sentient being. So because, you see, also in the it's very interesting, in the Vajrayana teachings, in the more esoteric teachings in Buddhism, the Tantrayana teachings, the Vajrayana teachings, which is the Tibetan medical system is based on, the view is that the physical universe is made of the 4 elements, like I mentioned. Just this is how it is. No one made it this way. It has just been this way since beginningless time. And then the point is this, though, the real point is this. There are trillions upon trillions upon trillions of consciousnesses, sentient beings, mind possessors. And all of our minds, this is again coming from the views of the yogis, they're inextricably linked with our own set of the 4 elements. So this is why when they describe the death process, which is dealt with in great detail in the literature. And really, the highest practices we do, we learn to go through this process so that when death comes, because it's this gradual deconstruction of the various components of the person, you eventually, you get to the very subtle level of your own consciousness there, which is the yogis can do in meditation, but which happens naturally at the time of death. And if you really practice, you can go through the death process, when you're a yogi, that you can get to this very subtle level, and then you can get all the realizations, because that's the subtlest level of your mind. So we've got this gross level of consciousness inextricably linked to this gross level of the physical. Then you've got subtle consciousness, and that occurs when you stop breathing. That also occurs every time you go to sleep, every time you dream. Your dream mind is what they call subtle consciousness, and this is inextricably linked with a subtler level of the 4 elements. And how they talk in the yoga system, and also in the Tibetan medical, you've got these subtle wind energies coursing through your body in this subtle nervous system, and they're all inextricably linked to your different states of mind. So you gradually go through this process of deconstructing from the gross to the subtle, and it's described in terms of 8 stages, and you get to the very subtle level of consciousness, which is inextricably linked with this very subtle level of this very subtle wind energy. And this is just the building blocks of the new person. And all minds are just constructed like this. And so depending on the karma you create, if a lot of negative actions, you pollute your wind energies, you pollute your own mind. So when you die, let's say you've done lots of killing, and when you die, instead of running like a magnet to a human mummy, you'll run like a magnet to a lion mummy's womb. It'll look delicious to you. Maybe we'll talk about the death process more later or tomorrow or something. And then your mind, literally then, due to your past actions, you conjoin with a lion womb, and off you go now with a mind suitable to a lion, with a body suitable to a lion's mind. And now you become a lion and act like a lion, with massive grasping, massive fear, massive aggression, and all your virtues are buried underneath. You can't access them. So we literally create our own realities with this concept of karma, you know. But it's all explained. So Lama Zopa says, in the Kalachakra Tantric teachings, there are these detailed descriptions of the intimate relationship between the internal energy, our mind, and the external, which is the elements. So as he said, if your mind is like angry, let's say, you know, the habit of anger all the time, that necessarily pollutes the wind energies connected to that anger, and then in turn, karmically, that causes, you know, sickness, karmically, eventually, and then in turn, even over many lifetimes, external imbalance of the physical energies out there. So even the physical universe is not made by some creator. It's not just some separate accidental event. It's literally the manifestation of the collective karma of all the sentient beings who live there. We've created it from countless lives in the past, you know. Even the physical elements. They have no life of their own. They're the manifestation of collective karma of trillions and trillions of sentient beings. So the Buddhist view is we literally create the universe. We create in front of us what's there. We meet what's there based on our past actions. People treat us in the way we've based on our past actions. People see us in that way. Our tendencies are that way. We are the creators. We don't need a separate creator, Buddha says. And we don't need a separate boss in here, which sounds so hilarious. This is Buddha's view. Time to go home.
Time for tea or time for tea break.
Well, it's time for home break, really, isn't it? It's nearly 5 o'clock. It was 25 to 5 and we finish at 5.
Can I ask something?
Go. Well, I think we'll have 5 more minutes and we'll finish. It's enough.
When you were last here, you spoke about a ritual you can do on the deathbed
to help those who die. Yeah, of course, there's many things you can do to help dying people. We can talk about that.
So do you sort of, let's say, you know, go straight to samsara when you do that, or?
Sorry, darling, what? I'm a bit confused. Say it again. Say it again, ask again.
If you have that ritual on your deathbed and you leave...
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, no, I understand. Okay, I think we'll talk about it tomorrow. It's a very interesting process. What happens at death, how our karma is triggered, and also how we can help at death. Help your mummy, help your animals. It's a very helpful one. We can do that. We'll talk about it tomorrow. The whole death process, and how, you know, and talking more again, how we do create our own universes. I mean, it's like, yeah, how this process of karma works, you know. And maybe we also talk about how we can purify karma.
Yes, please.
The practice of.
So it means that it will always be. Now we are learning and we are getting more understanding. But we see the world, how it's going.
Exactly, darling. It's not very hopeful, is it?
Yeah,
it's not very hopeful, I know. So this is
what
to do. This is where, okay, so if you're following the Buddhist approach, Buddha says, hey guys, I've got this method here. If you follow this, and it's up to us, you can get yourself out of samsara. You can get yourself stopping suffering. You can quit having to be reborn. But then now we add the compassion wing to the mix. And once you start working on yourself and you realise what a dump it all is and how you're sick of suffering and you get rid of it and you finally realise emptiness and cut the root and you perfect that, then you don't need to come back. You're gone. You're out of here, baby. But because you now realise everybody else is in the same boat, you develop this phenomenal compassion for others and you can't bear the thought. So then you will choose to come back again and again and again to be of benefit to others. But you're in charge of the process now. It's not a problem for you. You can have fun as well. Yes.
Some of us are here because we've chosen today.
You're asking or saying? Are you asking or saying?
I'm asking.
Yeah, the Buddhist view is you can get to that point where you can definitely choose. Most of us, if we're regular guys, you know, like most of us probably, you're driven by your own past actions. But the whole point is you can have control, complete control. And you can learn to really choose exactly, and then you can even become more powerful and manifest in more than one body all over the place, helping others. That's the idea. That's the body. That's the 2 wings of the bird one. I'll tell you something about that tomorrow. Little person. I think it's enough. I mean, I talk faster than most people, apparently. So it's like about sort of 7 p.m. No, I I always do quote this, and I'm not trying to be silly, but I know I always quote this. I'm sorry if it's boring, but I know when I was in Queensland for a while in Australia, the centre in Brisbane asked 3 of us nuns to come down from our centre an hour and a half away to give 3 talks on 3 Wednesdays or something, and they were 90 minutes. And they transcribed them, and the other 2 nuns were 8 pages, and mine were 24. So it seems like it's still the same. You know? And even when I get translated, I still apparently speak. I mean, I try to talk slowly, but it's quite difficult. It is quite difficult. And I talk loud, so it must be very exhausting and very intense for you. So please, but it's okay. Okay. Not?
It's what we deserve.
So you probably don't nod off to sleep while I talk, do you? That's one advantage. You don't go to sleep. No, really.
It's easy to hear you long after you're gone.
There you go, darling. So listen, just here we've been all day again, gone so quickly. All this food for thought. We think all these seeds have gone in. We don't remember 90% of it. But we have got, I'll tell you a nice story. I like this. This is showing the Buddha's point that we can remember. People often report near-death experiences. They have vivid memories of things. Well, this particular girl, there's 2 parts of this story. It really blew my mind. Just a little 10-minute thing on YouTube. This little Christian woman, young woman, Christian, she was very sweet, you know. Her mother left when she was young, so she always got depressed. She always took care of the kids. Then she got married, had her own babies, and she finally tried to kill herself. Well, she had this vivid experience, she said. This is the first point I want to show. The vividest of vivid experience, vision, crystal clear of every major event in her life. So this is first proving the Buddhist point that nothing goes astray from our mind. At our gross level, we're so thick and stupid, we can't remember even 99% of today. Forget about yesterday, forget about another life. But it's all there available to us, because everything we've thought in dead and sun is programmed. And that's when you get concentration, you also get clairvoyance naturally, because you're accessing a subtle level of mind. So that's really helpful. But the other thing that blew my mind about this woman, she said she experienced those experiences, every one of them, starting with her birth, from the point of view of the other person. Now that's 100% empathy. That's absolutely mind-blowing in my opinion. That's complete what complete compassion is, and we'll talk about this tomorrow. They talk about this really radical level of developing compassion, where they call it literally exchanging yourself for others, where eventually you get to the point where you become this bodhisattva, where literally others are more important than you. That was the most extraordinary thing. I couldn't believe that. Every event was from the point of view of the other person. That's intense, isn't it? But the memory one is a good one. So even though I'm saying it's our little dedication, here we don't remember 90% of what, including me. I couldn't repeat what I just said. But it's all gone in. It's stored it. We've stored it. I find that very nice, you know. So we can access it later. So we think also we've all sown all these seeds. And so we think, you know, these seeds we planted, may we nourish them from this moment forward with our effort, our work, our practice, whatever our practice is, to continue to develop our qualities, to continue to lessen our neurosis for our sake and the sake of others. And then may compassion grow and grow in the hearts of all. Changchub semchog rinpoche ma kepa nam ke gyuchig kepa nyampa me payang gong ne gong du pa shok. Thank you so much. Okay, bye.